Either get a job or get out. I'm sick of supporting a woman like you." My husband's words cut deep, triggering something inside me that snapped. Why should I endure the condescension of a man who belittles others to elevate his own sense of superiority? I'm better off without someone like him. My name is Melissa. I'm 36 and I juggle work with homemaking as a freelance illustrator. I've always been passionate about art and pursued it through college. After graduating, I worked at a design firm, but when I turned 30, I decided to go independent. I wanted to express myself creatively on my own terms. At that time, I was single and excited about living life my way. Then I met my husband, Daniel, through a mutual friend. We hit it off and decided to marry, registering our union a year later. Daniel's job as a salesman required him to travel extensively, which meant he worked long hours. He asked me to become a housewife, so I put my illustration career on hold. I was happy to manage the home while he was away, believing that we should support each other as a married couple. I thought I could return to my art career later and continue my studies in the meantime. We trusted each other and had no major complaints. However, life threw us a curveball when Daniel got promoted to head a new sales office. This promotion meant he wouldn't be transferred for a while, and we could finally settle down in one place. We were both excited about the prospect of stability after constantly moving and adapting to new cities. But the transition wasn't as smooth as I had hoped. Daniel was still overwhelmed with work, managing the new office and launching additional branches. On top of that, the cost of living in our new city was significantly higher than we anticipated. While Daniel's salary could cover our basic expenses, it left us living paycheck to paycheck, with no company housing assistance to fall back on. We wanted to save for the future, but his salary barely covered our current needs. I considered tapping into our savings for security, but it didn't feel like a stable solution. I asked my husband if it would be okay for me to work, as long as I managed the house well. He seemed unsure but eventually agreed, though he emphasized that I needed to keep up with the household chores. His response felt a bit off, but I figured he was just adjusting to the changes. I was excited to start my new job after all these years. However, things began to change for the worse. My husband started criticizing the meals I prepared, which he never did before. He complained about the food being subpar and even accused me of cutting corners, which felt unfair. When I explained that I found deals on ingredients to save money, he snapped, accusing me of implying his salary was too low. I was shocked by his reaction and struggled to understand why he was twisting my words. He yelled at me, saying I was ruining things by working instead of focusing on housework. I wanted to argue back but decided against it, thinking he must be stressed from his new responsibilities. I apologized, hoping he was just tired and would calm down. Despite my efforts, his attitude worsened. He started nitpicking everything, demanding that I handle chores to his exacting standards, and even questioned where his clothes were or whether I had shined his shoes. He seemed like a different person, constantly yelling and becoming more critical. Balancing housework and my job proved harder than I expected. I tried to work around the chores, but my husband's high standards meant that housework took up most of my time. When I suggested he help with the chores, he retorted that my job was worthless and that I should quit. He began to belittle me as just a housewife, using it as an insult. His constant criticism and refusal to help made everything feel overwhelming, and my distrust in him grew. Even though I was working, I was still treated like a housewife. I didn't understand his logic. My pay was low, but that was because he kept interrupting me, making it hard to get more work done. Frustrated, I decided to focus more on my job and do fewer chores. One day, while cleaning, I found his old pay stubs on his desk. Out of curiosity, I looked at them and was shocked to see that his salary was about half of what I had been told. I wondered where the extra money was coming from. He had supposedly gotten a promotion, so why was his salary lower? I couldn't find any old pay stubs from before the promotion, and I felt certain something was wrong. Then, my husband's uncle called. He said he had lent my husband a lot of money and was wondering when he would be paid back. It dawned on me that my husband had been covering the salary gap with loans from his uncle. I was devastated. I apologized to his uncle and promised to pay him back. Even though I felt awful, the uncle was kind and said to repay him when we could. That night, I didn't mention the debts or the pay stubs to my husband, but my frustration with him grew. He continued to belittle me, criticize my cooking and cleaning, and interfere with my work. When I tried to stand up for myself, he slammed his fist on the table and insulted me, saying I was wasting money and questioning who was providing for us. I was done with his behavior. I told him that I was doing my part and that his words were contradictory. I didn't want to put up with his insults anymore. He said I should start earning money if I wanted to complain, and I thought he should do the same. I stayed silent as he continued to insult me, saying I was a burden and that I should leave if I wasn't going to work. His triumphant look as he said these things sent a shiver down my spine. He probably thought I'd apologize, but I was ready to leave. I grabbed my packed bags and started to walk out. "You can't do anything on your own anyway," he said. I gave him a cold look and said, "I'm leaving this behind." I slapped the divorce papers I'd gotten from the city hall onto the table. He looked stunned and didn't know how to react. I told him, "Make sure you fill these out and send them soon," then left for my parents' house. I had already told them what was happening, and they welcomed me with open arms. My parents were upset about his attitude, the low income, and the debt. They strongly advised me to get a divorce, which I intended to do. My dad offered to help me find a lawyer if I had trouble with the divorce process. I thanked him for his support, hoping to end the marriage quickly. A week later, my husband showed up at my parents' house. "Did you fill out the divorce papers?" I asked. He looked nervous and said, "I'm sorry, please reconsider the divorce." I was surprised by his sudden change in attitude. Although my parents were skeptical, they agreed to let him in to talk. It turned out that his promotion was a lie. He had actually been demoted to a less important job and his salary had dropped as a result. He wasn't good at his job and had been shuffled around due to poor performance. Now, he was stuck in a low-ranking position with little chance for advancement. His pride had kept him from telling me the truth, so he had pretended to be successful to boost his ego. At home, he had taken out his frustrations on me, trying to maintain a sense of superiority. When I left, I had left a copy of my bank statement behind. Even though I earned less than he did, it was still enough to support us. He admitted that he needed me and couldn't afford the rent on his own. He asked if we could try again, promising to change and not make me suffer anymore. I was unmoved and indifferent to his tears. I simply brushed him off. "If you can't afford the rent, then just move. You can find cheaper places if you're on your own. And what about the debt to your uncle? You need to pay that back, right?" When I said this, his eyes widened. He was still trying to hide the debt and start fresh. It's hard to reason with some people. I understand that he was borrowing money to get by, but if we're talking about starting over, he should have been honest about everything. My dad added, "You've been so dishonest. I can't imagine letting you have custody of our daughter now. What were you planning to do about the debt without telling her?" My husband didn't respond to my dad's comment. I kept pressing the issue, saying, "If you won't agree to the divorce, I'll hire a lawyer. Your abusive behavior is grounds for divorce, and I have evidence." He seemed to give up and took the divorce papers out of his bag. "I've really messed up beyond repair. It's too late now. We're strangers," he said. I took the papers and we split the small amount of savings we had. We moved out of our apartment, and I heard he quit his job. Apparently, news of our divorce made his already difficult work situation even worse. He said he was paying back his uncle slowly and working part-time. After the divorce, he reached out several times, asking to reconcile and saying he realized I was the only one who had been on his side. His constant pleas made me uncomfortable, so I changed my phone number. If he had set aside his pride and been honest, maybe things could have been different, but I couldn't forgive his abusive behavior, and the love had faded long ago. I walked away and focused on my career as an illustrator. I'm busy, but every day feels fulfilling. I looked out the window from my computer, thinking about how that moment of courage had changed my life. I'm living my one and only life to the fullest, with no regrets.
My name is Emily Adams, a wife trapped in the clutches of a dysfunctional family. My husband, Mark, is a kind and loving man, but the same cannot be said about his mother and brother. We met on a sunny day, and love bloomed between us. Little did I know that my path was intertwined with a family that would torment me. Mark's mother, Margaret, was a woman of sharp edges and a poisonous tongue. Her piercing glares and snide remarks were a constant presence, like a thorn in my side. And then there was Brian, Mark's younger brother, a man whose arrogance knew no bounds. They formed a toxic duo that made my life a living hell. It all started innocently enough. After Mark and I tied the knot, we eagerly embarked on our journey as a married couple. We visited Mark's family, hoping for a warm welcome and a chance to build a bond. But from the moment I stepped into their house, I felt a chill in the air, as if their disapproval had seeped into the very walls. Margaret's disapproving eyes scanned me from head to toe, her voice dripping with disdain. "So this is the girl you chose," she sneered, her words laced with contempt. Brian stood by her side, smirking, his superiority evident in every fiber of his being. "You could have done better, Mark," he remarked, his voice brimming with arrogance. I tried my best to remain composed, to brush off their cruel words. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, their treatment of me grew worse. Margaret found fault in everything I did. The way I dressed, the way I spoke, even the way I decorated our humble abode. Brian was no different, always quick to make snide comments and undermine my confidence. One evening, as we gathered around the dinner table, Margaret's passive, aggressive comments reached a boiling point. "Emily, dear, you really should learn how to cook. It's a wife's duty to take care of her husband," she declared, her voice dripping with disdain. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, and anger surged through my veins. I mustered the courage to speak up. "Margaret, I do my best. Cooking is not my strongest suit, but I'm always willing to learn," I said, my voice steady but tinged with frustration. Mark glanced at me, his eyes pleading for peace. "Please, let's not argue," he interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. But Margaret wasn't finished. She turned her gaze on him, her voice laced with condescension. "You see, Mark, she can't even handle the simplest of tasks. Maybe you should have thought twice before marrying her," she spat, her words like venomous daggers aimed at my heart. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, the weight of Margaret's words lingering in the air. I excused myself, tears threatening to spill from my eyes. Alone in our room, I questioned my place in this family, wondering how I had become the target of their relentless cruelty. And so, the seeds of resentment and determination took root within me. I vowed to find strength within myself, to rise above their toxic behavior. Little did they know I would soon unleash a storm they would never forget, a storm painted with the colors of revenge. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the cycle of torment persisted. Margaret and Brian found every opportunity to belittle me, criticizing my appearance, my choices, and even my cooking skills. The weight of their constant disapproval gnawed at my spirit, and I struggled to find solace within the walls of their oppressive home. I sought solace in Mark's arms, pouring out my heartache and frustration. "Mark, I can't take it anymore," I confessed, tears streaming down my face. "Your mother and brother treat me like I'm worthless. I feel trapped and suffocated." Mark held me tightly, his voice filled with empathy. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I never wanted this for us. I thought they would come around, see the wonderful person you are, but it seems they're blinded by their own prejudices." I gazed into his eyes, searching for a glimmer of hope. "What can we do, Mark? I can't continue living like this. It's tearing us apart." Mark's resolve hardened as he spoke. "We'll confront them. We'll make them see the pain they're causing. We deserve better, Emily. We deserve better, Emily. We deserve a life free from their toxic presence." Heartened by his determination, I mustered the strength to face Margaret and Brian once again. We invited them over for dinner, hoping that this time they would be receptive to our plea for understanding. As they arrived, tension hung thick in the air like a storm gathering its strength. Margaret's cold gaze met mine, a disdainful smile playing on her lips. Well, if it isn't the incompetent wife trying to play hostess," she remarked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Brian joined in, his voice laced with mockery. "I hope you've improved since the last disastrous meal you served." Mark stepped forward, his voice firm but controlled. That's enough, Mom, Brian. We invited you here tonight to address a serious matter. We can't go on like this. Emily is my wife, and I won't stand by while you continue to mistreat her. Margaret's eyes flashed with anger, her voice rising in fury. How dare you speak to me like that? You're my son, and I won't tolerate your disrespect. I took a deep breath, mustering my courage. Margaret, Brian, we deserve respect and kindness. We're a family, and it's time we start treating each other with decency. Brian scoffed, his arrogance evident. Decency? Please. You're nothing more than an inconvenience to us. Mark's voice trembled with a mix of frustration and determination. No, Brian, you're wrong. Emily is the best thing that has happened to me, and if you can't accept that, then maybe it's time we reassess our relationship. Silence hung heavy in the room, broken only by the sound of our collective breaths. Margaret's eyes flickered with a hint of realization, her usual haughtiness momentarily faltering. Maybe, she whispered, her voice barely audible, maybe we've been too hard on you, Emily. It's just... My heart swelled with a glimmer of hope, a flicker of redemption. Perhaps, just perhaps, we had managed to pierce through their hardened shells. But as the days turned into weeks once again, their behavior shifted back to its familiar patterns. It became clear that their temporary softening was nothing more than a facade, a brief respite in the midst of an ongoing storm. The hidden wounds continued to fester within me, feeding the fire of my determination. I knew then that mere words and pleas for understanding were not enough. It was time to take matters into my own hands, to show them the extent of their cruelty and the consequences it would bring. The seeds of revenge took root, and a plan began to take shape in my mind, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One fateful day, Mark and I decided to visit his family once again, hoping for a glimmer of understanding and a chance to bridge the widening gap. As we entered the house, tension hung thick in the air, like a storm about to unleash its fury. Margaret's voice dripped with condescension as she greeted us, her words laced with underlying disdain. Well, if it isn't the prodigal son and his inadequate wife, she sneered, her eyes narrowing as she focused on me. I hope you finally learned your place. I exchanged a quick glance with Mark, his eyes filled with a mixture of weariness and determination. We had hoped for a change, a breakthrough, but it seemed that Margaret's animosity only grew with time. We settled into the living room, attempting to maintain a facade of civility. But it didn't take long for the conversation to turn sour. Margaret's words cut through the air like icy daggers. Mark, I can't understand why you settled for someone like her, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. You could have had any woman, and yet you chose this. Anger boiled within me, but I bit my lip, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Mark, however, wasn't as willing to stay silent. Mom, enough, he exclaimed, his voice filled with frustration. Emily is my wife, and I love her. I won't allow you to disrespect her any longer. Margaret's face flushed with anger, her eyes blazing with fury. You dare to raise your voice at me, she spat. You've become weak, Mark, blinded by your infatuation with her. Mark's voice wavered, his determination unwavering. No, Mom, I've just finally seen the truth. I won't let you tear us apart anymore. We deserve better. The room grew uncomfortably silent, the tension thick enough to suffocate. I could feel the weight of Margaret's glare, her resentment simmering just beneath the surface. And then, like a match thrown into a powder keg, the argument erupted. Words flew back and forth, each one more hurtful than the last. Accusations were hurled, wounds were reopened, and the shattered fragments of a fragile relationship lay scattered around us. Amidst the chaos, Margaret's rage reached its peak. Her eyes bore into mine, her voice dripping with venom. You know what? If you're so desperate for attention, why don't you sleep outside tonight? Maybe then you'll realize your place in this family. Shock coursed through my veins like electricity. Sleep outside. The audacity of her demand was beyond comprehension. The room fell silent once more, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a dark cloud. I glanced at Mark, his face etched with a mixture of concern and anger. It was the tipping point, the moment when the last strands of hope snapped, leaving nothing but a burning desire for revenge. As I stood there, the shock transforming into determination, a plan began to form in my mind. I would not let them break me any longer. Their cruelty had reached its peak, and I would show them the consequences of their actions. With a clenched jaw and a fire in my eyes, I left the room, refusing to give them the satisfaction of witnessing my tears. I would not allow myself to be a victim any longer. It was time to take control, to strike back in a way that would leave an indelible mark. I walked out into the cool night air, the darkness wrapping around me like a protective shield. My mind raced, searching for the perfect way to exact my revenge. And then it hit me, a stroke of inspiration that would forever change the dynamic between us. The following day, I embarked on a mission. I drove to the hardware store, determination coursing through my veins. With each stroke of the paintbrush, I poured my anger, my frustration, and my desire for justice onto the front of their house. As the colors danced across the once pristine facade, I knew that this act would not only be a symbol of my defiance, but a catalyst for change. The unsuspecting canvas became a manifestation of the pain they had inflicted upon me, a tangible reminder that their actions would no longer go unanswered. With the final stroke of the brush, I stepped back, marveling at my creation. The house stood there transformed, its walls now emblazoned with the colors of my revenge. It was a bold statement, a warning that their mistreatment would no longer be tolerated. Little did they know that this act of defiance was only the beginning. The wheels had been set in motion, and the game had shifted in my favor. I would make them see the consequences of their actions, unraveling their carefully constructed world, until they were left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own cruelty. As I walked away from the house, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The storm had been unleashed, and I was the orchestrator of its chaos. Revenge was no longer a distant dream. It was now my reality, and I would savor every moment of it. With the front of their house painted as a vivid reminder of their mistreatment, I reveled in the knowledge that my revenge had begun. The transformation had ignited a spark within me, a newfound strength that fueled my determination to make them pay for their cruelty. As days turned into weeks, I carefully laid the groundwork for my plan. I conducted meticulous research, uncovering their deepest fears and vulnerabilities. It was time to turn the tables, to play the game by my rules. One evening, Mark and I received an invitation from Margaret. She requested our presence for a family dinner, her tone laced with a false sense of reconciliation. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, a chance to expose their true colors. We arrived at their house, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Margaret welcomed us with a forced smile, her eyes flickering with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I sensed her unease, and it fueled my determination to carry out my plan. Over dinner, the conversation danced around trivial matters, yet I could sense the underlying unease, the unspoken question of what lay beneath the surface. It was time to push their boundaries, to make them confront the consequences of their actions. Brian, ever the provocateur, couldn't resist taking a jab at me. So Emily, have you finally realized your place in this family? Or are you still trying to be something you're not? I met his gaze, a sly smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Oh, Brian, I said, my voice dripping with mock innocence. I've learned many things during my time in this family, and it's given me a unique perspective. Margaret's eyes narrowed, suspicion glimmering within them. What are you implying, Emily? She demanded, her voice laced with caution. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. You see, Margaret, actions have consequences. And I've come to realize that your actions have painted you in a rather unflattering light. Mark shot me a concerned glance, but I assured him with a reassuring smile. I had planned this carefully, and I was prepared for their reactions. The room fell silent, the weight of my words lingering in the air. Margaret's face contorted with a mixture of anger and curiosity. What are you talking about, Emily? Speak clearly, she demanded. I reveled in the moment, allowing a flicker of triumph to dance in my eyes. Do you remember the night I slept outside? The night you humiliated me, Margaret? I said, my voice steady but tinged with an underlying threat. Brian scoffed, his arrogance still intact. What about it? You're just an outsider trying to disrupt our family. I leaned back in my chair, a glimmer of mischief in my eyes. Well, Brian, that night was just the beginning. You see, I've been keeping something from both of you, a secret that will expose your true selves to the world. Their eyes widened, a mixture of fear and curiosity spreading across their faces. I relished in their discomfort, knowing that the seeds of revenge had taken root. What secret? Margaret demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of anticipation and dread. I leaned forward once more, my voice dripping with calculated delight. Let's just say I've gathered quite a collection of evidence. Phone records, emails, hidden conversations, it's all there, meticulously documented. A tense silence enveloped the room, the weight of my words hanging like a guillotine over their heads. I could see the panic rising within them, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of their own guilt. You can't prove anything, Brian muttered, his bravado wavering. Oh, but I can, I replied, a wicked smile playing on my lips. And if you don't want the world to know the true extent of your cruelty, I suggest you start treating me with the respect I deserve. The room buzzed with unease, the power dynamics shifting before their eyes. They were at my mercy now, cornered by their own actions. As we left their house that night, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The seeds of revenge had been sown, and the game had taken a thrilling turn. They would think twice before crossing me again. Little did they know that this was only the beginning. The storm I had unleashed would continue to grow, its fury mounting until it consumed them completely. Revenge would be mine. The stage was set, and the final act of my revenge was about to unfold. The evidence I had collected meticulously lay like a ticking time bomb, ready to shatter the illusion they had built around themselves.
With every passing day, their behavior shifted. Margaret's once haughty demeanor became tinged with apprehension, and Brian's arrogance waned as the weight of their secrets bore down on them. They were acutely aware that the tables had turned, that they were no longer in control. One evening, I received a call from Margaret. Her voice trembled, the facade of confidence slipping away. "Emily, we need to talk," she said, her tone laced with desperation. Curiosity piqued, I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe. As I sat across from her, I could see the fear in her eyes, the remnants of the once indomitable matriarch now reduced to a fragile shell. "What is it, Margaret?" I asked, my voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and satisfaction. She took a deep breath, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Emily, I can't go on like this. The weight of my actions, our actions, it's suffocating me. I'm willing to change, to make amends." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. "Oh, Margaret, how the mighty have fallen," I remarked, relishing in the reversal of power. But words alone won't suffice. Actions speak louder than empty promises. Margaret's gaze pleaded with mine. Desperation etched across her face. "Tell me what I need to do. I'll do anything to make this right." A devilish smile played on my lips as I laid out my terms. "First, I want a public apology, a sincere acknowledgement of the pain you've caused, and a promise to treat me with respect moving forward." Margaret nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of resignation and determination. "I can do that. What else?" "And second," I continued, "the anticipation building. I want you to confess to Mark about the depths of your mistreatment, to acknowledge the role you played in our suffering." Her eyes widened, fear flickering within them. I can't do that. He'll hate me." I leaned forward, my voice firm but laced with a touch of menace. "If you want any chance at redemption, Margaret, you will tell him the truth. The choice is yours." Weeks passed, and Margaret's public apology reverberated through our social circles. The whispers grew louder, the scrutiny sharper. The weight of her confession weighed heavily on her, but it was a necessary step toward healing. The cracks in their familial facade had deepened, and their bond began to unravel. Mark confronted his mother, demanding answers, seeking the truth that had been hidden from him for so long. The revelation shattered him, but it was a necessary catharsis for both of us. As the dust settled, I watched from a distance, observing the impact of my vengeance. Their once seemingly impenetrable fortress had crumbled, and they were left with the remnants of their shattered illusions. In the wake of their unraveling, I found a sense of closure, a newfound strength that had grown from the depths of their mistreatment. Revenge, once a burning desire, had transformed into empowerment. I had claimed my worth, exposed their cruelty, and emerged stronger on the other side. And as I walked away from their fractured world, I realized that revenge was not merely an act of retaliation. It was a catalyst for change, a means of reclaiming my identity, and a reminder that no one should ever be subjected to such mistreatment. With a heart full of resolve, I stepped into the light, leaving behind the shadows of their cruelty. My journey was far from over, but I walked it with my head held high, no longer defined by their twisted perceptions. Revenge had been my vehicle to liberation, and I embraced the newfound freedom with every step.
My name is Emma, a 35-year-old woman who always believed in love and family. I was happily married to David, a charming and charismatic man, or so I thought. And then there was my mother-in-law, Patricia, a cunning and manipulative woman who always seemed to have her way. Little did I know, their deceitful actions were about to turn my world upside down. It was a warm summer evening when I stumbled upon a shocking discovery that would shatter my trust and alter my life forever. I had been searching for an important document in our study when I noticed a peculiar file tucked away in the drawer. Curiosity piqued. I opened it, only to find a series of bank statements and documents related to a secret account. My heart raced as I realized that it was my bank book, the one I had kept hidden with $500,000. I rushed to confront David, my voice trembling with disbelief. "David, what is this? Where did you get all this money?" He turned pale, his eyes darting around as he struggled to find an explanation. "Emma, it's not what you think. I can explain everything." But before he could utter another word, Patricia entered the room with a sly smile. "Emma, my dear, I think it's time we had a little chat." Fury coursed through my veins as I glared at Patricia. "You knew about this, didn't you? How could you betray me like this?" Patricia chuckled, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, Emma, you always thought you were the clever one, but you were so naive. David and I saw an opportunity, and we took it. You were too busy trusting us to even notice." Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to comprehend the depth of their deceit. "I trusted you both. I thought we were family. How could you do this to me?" David's face twisted with guilt, but his voice remained cold. It was an opportunity we couldn't resist, Emma. The money was just sitting there, and we thought we deserved a better life. Anger overtook my sorrow, and I lashed out at them, my voice trembling with indignation. Deserved a better life. You stole from me, from us. How can you justify this? Patricia's eyes narrowed, her tone laced with disdain. We did what we had to do, Emma. Life isn't fair, and sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. A surge of determination replaced my initial shock. Well, I won't let you get away with this. I will fight for what is rightfully mine, and you both will face the consequences of your actions. Their smug expressions faltered as they realized the strength of my resolve. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight for justice and reclaim my stolen fortune. Little did they know that their actions had awakened a fierce determination within me, one that would lead to a bitter reckoning in the days to come. As Patricia and David's betrayal unfolded before my eyes, my heart sank deeper into despair. Patricia revealed her conniving scheme, explaining how she had convinced David to steal my bank book and use the money to build a lavish house behind my back. You always thought you were the smart one, didn't you, Emma? Patricia sneered, her words laced with malice. But now, you see, we've outsmarted you. Anger boiled within me as I confronted them both. How could you do this to me? To us, I trusted you. David's face contorted with guilt, but his voice remained cold. Emma, it was an opportunity we couldn't resist. The money was just sitting there, and we thought we deserved a better life. Fury ignited within me, fueling my determination to uncover the depths of their deception. Deserve a better life. You stole from me. How could you justify this? Patricia's smirk widened, her voice dripping with contempt. Life isn't fair, my dear. Sometimes you have to take what you want. You were always too trusting, too blind to see what was happening around you. I felt a surge of anger mixed with sadness, realizing the truth behind Patricia's manipulations. You were supposed to be family, Patricia. How could you betray me like this? She shrugged dismissively. Family is just a word. Emma. In the end, everyone looks out for their own interests. We saw an opportunity, and we seized it. My mind raced, trying to process the magnitude of their deception. What about our marriage? What about the vows we took? David's voice softened slightly, revealing hints of remorse. Emma, I never intended for things to turn out this way. I got caught up in Patricia's plans, and I lost sight of what truly mattered. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had to stay strong, to fight back against the twisted tale they had woven. I won't let you get away with this. I will seek justice, and I will reclaim what is rightfully mine. David's remorseful expression wavered, replaced by a defensive stance. You think you can take us on? Emma? You're nothing without us. You'll see. A flicker of determination ignited within me, a fire fueled by their betrayal. We'll see, indeed. You may have underestimated me, but I won't back down. This twisted tale you've spun ends now. With those words, I turned my back on them, my mind set on seeking the justice I deserved. The path ahead was uncertain and treacherous, but I vowed to unearth the truth and emerge victorious. Their deceit would not define me. Determined not to let their deceit go unpunished, I decided to fight back and reclaim what was rightfully mine. I sought the counsel of a skilled attorney, Lisa Thompson, who specialized in matrimonial law. Lisa listened intently as I poured out the details of their betrayal, and she assured me that justice would prevail. Over the next few months, I gathered evidence, meticulously documenting every instance of their deception. The court battles were grueling, but I remained resolute. The house they had built with my stolen money would not remain in their hands. One evening, I sat across from Lisa in her office, a stack of papers and files spread out before us. Do you think we have a strong case? I asked, anxiety tightening its grip on my chest. Lisa leaned forward, her eyes filled with determination. Emma, we have a compelling case. We have solid evidence of their wrongdoing, and the law is on our side. We will fight for justice and reclaim what is rightfully yours. A glimmer of hope sparked within me, overshadowing the lingering doubts. I won't let them get away with this, Lisa. I want to expose their lies and deceit. Lisa nodded, her voice firm. We will do just that, Emma. We'll present the evidence, expose their actions, and seek justice through the courts. It won't be easy, but I believe in your strength and determination. Days turned into weeks as we prepared for the legal battle ahead. I spent countless hours with Lisa, going through documents, rehearsing my testimony, and building a strong case against David and Patricia. Doubts and fears tried to creep in, but I refused to let them weaken my resolve. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I sat anxiously in the courtroom, surrounded by my family and friends for support. Lisa stood by my side, her presence a source of reassurance amidst the sea of uncertainty. As the proceedings began, Lisa skillfully presented the evidence, unveiling the intricate web of deceit that David and Patricia had spun. Their faces betrayed a mixture of anger and disbelief as the truth unfolded before them. David's lawyer, Mr. Stevens, attempted to defend his actions, but his arguments fell flat against the weight of the evidence. Frustration and desperation crept into his voice as he struggled to counter our claims. In a tense moment during cross-examination, Mr. Stevens tried to undermine my credibility, questioning my motives and character. Lisa stepped in, her voice strong and unwavering. "Objection, Your Honor." The defense is attempting to divert attention from the facts and engage in character assassination. We are here to focus on the truth. The judge upheld Lisa's objection, reprimanding Mr. Stevens for his tactics. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as we pressed on, determined to seek justice and reclaim what was rightfully mine. After weeks of testimonies, arguments, and deliberation, the judge finally delivered the verdict. The evidence was irrefutable, and the truth could no longer be concealed. The house built with my money would be returned to me, and David would face the consequences of his actions. As I walked out of the courtroom, the weight of the past months seemed to lift off my shoulders. Although victory was bittersweet, I knew that justice had been served. I had regained my independence and freed myself from the clutches of betrayal. Looking toward the future, I vowed to rebuild my life and rediscover the happiness I had lost. It would take time, but with the support of my friends and family, I would heal and find a new beginning, leaving the painful memories of David and Patricia behind me. After a long and exhausting legal battle, the day of reckoning arrived. The courtroom was filled with tension as the judge delivered the verdict. The evidence was irrefutable, and the truth could no longer be concealed. The house, built with my stolen money, would be returned to me, and David would face the consequences of his actions. As I stood there, hearing the judge's words, a mix of emotions washed over me. Relief and satisfaction mingled with a lingering bitterness. The victory I had fought so hard for had come at a great cost. The betrayal of a husband, the shattered trust in a family member, and the irreversible damage to a once loving relationship. David's face contorted with anger and disbelief as he absorbed the weight of the judge's decision. "This can't be happening," he muttered under his breath, his voice laced with frustration. I met his gaze, my voice firm and resolute. "It is happening, David. The consequences of your actions have caught up with you. You thought you could take what was mine, but justice has prevailed." Patricia, standing nearby, shot me a venomous glare. "You may have won the battle, Emma, but don't think for a second that this is the end. We won't let you enjoy this victory for long." Her words stung, but I refused to let her poison my moment of triumph. "Your threats hold no power over me, Patricia. I fought hard to reclaim what was stolen from me, and I won't allow you to disrupt my path to healing and happiness." With the court proceedings concluded, I walked out of the courtroom, surrounded by my loved ones. Mixed emotions swirled within me, a sense of justice served, but also a profound sadness for the love and trust that had been shattered beyond repair. Over the following weeks, I began the process of reclaiming the house that had been built with my stolen money. The legal proceedings were intricate, and the transition of ownership came with its own challenges. However, with the unwavering support of my lawyer, Lisa, and the tenacity I had cultivated throughout the ordeal, I navigated the complexities. Finally, the keys to the house were placed in my hands. It stood before me, a symbol of both victory and heartache. Stepping inside, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of bitterness at the reminder of the betrayal that had transpired within those walls. But as time passed, I slowly transformed the house into a sanctuary of healing. Bit by bit, I infused it with my own spirit, redecorating and rearranging until it became a place of solace rather than a painful reminder. One evening, Sitting on the porch of my newly reclaimed house, I reflected on the journey I had undertaken. The bitter taste of victory still lingered, but it was gradually being replaced by a sense of empowerment and resilience. Gazing into the sunset, I whispered to myself, I will rebuild my life. I will find happiness again. They may have taken a part of my past, but they will not define my future. With those words, I let go of the bitterness and embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. The bitter victory had become a catalyst for my personal growth, and I was determined to create a new chapter filled with strength, happiness, and a renewed sense of self.
I never thought I would find myself in this situation. My name is Emily Thompson, a 32-year-old woman with hazel eyes and chestnut hair that fell in gentle waves around my shoulders. I had always prided myself on being a supportive wife to Daniel, my 35-year-old husband with his sandy blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. We had built a life together filled with love, trust, and what I believed to be complete transparency. Our cozy suburban home was a testament to our shared dreams and aspirations. As a freelance graphic designer, I often worked from home, while Daniel excelled in his demanding career as a marketing executive. Though his frequent business trips kept us apart, I believed they were a necessary sacrifice for our future. One evening, as the soft golden light of the setting sun spilled through the windows, I sat at our kitchen table, sorting through the day's mail. Bills, advertisements, and the occasional invitation to a neighborhood gathering littered the surface. But one particular envelope caught my eye, a plain white envelope with a familiar hotel logo on the corner. Curiosity piqued. I tore open the envelope to reveal its contents. A hotel reservation confirmation addressed to Daniel Thompson. Confusion knotted my stomach. Why would he need a hotel reservation? Was there an important business conference I hadn't been aware of? Unease settled over me like a heavy blanket as I turned to the internet seeking answers to the questions that plagued my mind. With trembling fingers, I typed Daniel's name into the search engine, hoping it would yield some innocent explanation. My heart sank as the search results unfurled before me. The truth hit me like a thunderbolt. The man I trusted with all my heart had been leading a double life, a life filled with secrets and betrayal. The evidence sprawled across my computer screen, detailing his affair with a woman named Isabella. The realization struck me with the force of 1,000 waves crashing upon the shore. Fury mingled with heartbreak as tears welled up in my eyes. How could Daniel do this to me? How long had he been deceiving me? Questions swirled in my mind, but there was no time for answers. It was time to take matters into my own hands. Daniel, I called out, my voice laced with an unusual mix of anger and sorrow. Can we talk? Now? Daniel entered the kitchen, a hint of confusion etched on his face. Sure, what's wrong? I took a deep breath, summoning the strength to confront him. I found something, Daniel, something that shattered the image of our perfect life. His eyes widened in surprise, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Emily, what are you talking about? What did you find? With tears streaming down my face, I held up the hotel reservation confirmation. This, Daniel, explain this to me. Explain this to me. Explain why you've been lying to me about these business trips. His face paled, his features contorting in guilt and regret. Emily, I can explain. It's not what you think. But I couldn't bear to hear his excuses. The truth was there, staring me in the face. The illusion of normalcy had shattered, leaving behind a broken heart and a resolve to seek justice for the betrayal I had endured. No, Daniel, I said, my voice quivering with a mix of pain and determination. No more lies. The truth is out, and now it's time for us to face the consequences of your actions. The revelation of Daniel's infidelity had plunged me into a whirlwind of emotions. Anger and heartache battled within me as I delved deeper into the web of deceit that had entangled our once seemingly perfect marriage. It was time to unveil the truth and confront Daniel head-on.
Days turned into sleepless nights as I scoured the internet, seeking any information I could find about Isabella, the woman who had become Daniel's secret lover. Piece by piece, I unraveled their clandestine affair, stumbling upon incriminating messages and shared photos that painted a picture of betrayal. One evening, as darkness settled over the house, I mustered the courage to confront Daniel once more. His usual aura of confidence had diminished, replaced by a restless tension that hung heavy in the air. "Daniel," I began, my voice quivering with a mixture of hurt and determination. "I know about Isabella. I know about your affair." He winced, his gaze falling to the ground. "Emily, I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake," I scoffed, the bitterness in my voice evident. "A mistake? You've been lying to me, deceiving me for who knows how long. How can you call that a mistake?" He sighed, his voice laced with regret. "I don't expect you to understand, but Isabella, she made me feel alive again. Our relationship had grown stagnant, and I was weak." His words cut through me like a knife, intensifying the pain that already consumed me. "Weak? Is that your excuse? So instead of addressing our problems, you sought solace in the arms of another woman?" Daniel's eyes met mine, filled with a mix of guilt and shame. "I messed up, Emily. I know that. But please, let's talk about this. Maybe we can work things out." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Work things out? How can we work things out? How can we work things out when trust has been shattered? You've betrayed me, Daniel. There's no going back from that." He reached out to touch my arm, his voice pleading. "Please, Emily, give me a chance to make it right. I love you, and I never wanted to hurt you." Tears welled up in my eyes, a storm of conflicting emotions raging within me. Part of me yearned to believe his words, to cling to the remnants of the love we once shared, but the weight of his betrayal weighed heavily on my heart. "I need time, Daniel," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Time to process everything, time to decide what comes next." As I walked away, leaving him standing in the wake of his own deception, I knew that the road ahead would be treacherous. Revenge had not yet crossed my mind, but the seed of retribution had been planted. The illusions of normalcy had been shattered, and the journey towards healing and justice had only just begun. With the truth of Daniel's betrayal exposed, a simmering anger fueled my determination to take control of the situation. It was time to assert my power and ensure that his actions had consequences. Revenge became my guiding light, propelling me forward with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The first step in my plan was to strip Daniel of his ability to support his secret affair. I gathered all his credit cards, feeling a sense of empowerment with each one I added to the pile. With a trembling hand, I made the decision to block them, severing his access to the funds he had used to maintain his double life. As I sat at the desk, my fingers flying over the keyboard, a hint of a smile tugged at the corners of my lips. The click of keys echoed through the room, a symphony of retribution. It was a small act, but it would limit his financial resources and force him to confront the consequences of his betrayal. Next, my attention turned to his belongings. I moved through the house with a calculated purpose, meticulously packing his clothes, gadgets, and personal items. Each item held a memory, a fragment of the life we had shared, but now they represented the betrayal that had shattered it all. A sense of both satisfaction and sorrow mingled within me as I placed each item in a box. This act of removing him from my life physically felt like a cleansing ritual, a way to purge myself of the pain his actions had inflicted. And so I carefully labeled the box, addressing it to Isabella, the mistress who had unknowingly become the recipient of his possessions. As the package was sealed and ready for shipment, I couldn't help but wonder how Isabella would react when she received it. Would she be taken aback by the sudden arrival of Daniel's belongings? Would it be a catalyst for her to question his commitment to their relationship? The thought brought a bittersweet smile to my face. Although revenge was not a path I had ever imagined myself walking, it provided a twisted sense of justice. I had taken control of the situation, reclaiming my power in the face of betrayal. Days turned into weeks as I awaited Daniel's return from his supposed business trip. The anticipation grew within me, mingling with a newfound sense of liberation. No longer would I be the naive wife, waiting at home, oblivious to his infidelity. The tables had turned, and I held the reins of our relationship. Finally, the day arrived when Daniel stepped through the front door, oblivious to the storm that awaited him. His face wore a mask of exhaustion, unaware of the revelation that awaited him. I stood in the living room, my body tense, yet resolute. "Welcome home, Daniel," I said, my voice steady and filled with a quiet strength. "We need to talk." His brow furrowed in confusion, his tired eyes searching for answers. "Emily, what's going on? Is something wrong?" I met his gaze, my eyes reflecting the pain he had caused. "I know about Isabella, Daniel. I know about your secret affair. No more lies." Shock washed over his face, guilt etched in every line. "Emily, I can explain," he stammered. But explanations were no longer of interest to me. The trust we had shared had been shattered, and there was no turning back. I had already exacted my revenge, and now it was time to move forward to rebuild my life without him. With a newfound resolve, I met his gaze and simply said, "It's over, Daniel. It's time for me to find happiness without you." As his words faltered, I turned away, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. Revenge had brought a temporary satisfaction, but it was only the beginning of the journey towards healing and self-discovery. The road ahead may be challenging, but I was determined to walk it with my head held high. Days turned into weeks, and a heavy silence hung in the air as Daniel and I navigated the aftermath of his betrayal. The once vibrant energy of our home had been replaced by a palpable tension, each passing moment a reminder of the fractured foundation upon which our marriage had been built. Throughout this period, I sought solace in introspection and contemplation. I questioned my own role in the unraveling of our relationship, analyzing the signs I had missed and the trust I had missed and the trust I had blindly bestowed upon Daniel. It was a painful process, but it allowed me to find the strength to move forward, to face the truth with unwavering resolve. One evening, as the fading sunlight cast a melancholic hue across the room, I knew the time had come for the final confrontation. Daniel had returned from work, his weariness etched on his face, while my heart beat with a mix of trepidation and newfound determination. Sitting on the edge of our living room couch, I took a deep breath and turned to face him. "Daniel, we need to talk," I said, my voice calm yet tinged with an undertone of sadness. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of remorse and longing. "I know, Emily. I've been trying to find the right words to say." I gestured for him to join me, our gazes meeting in a moment of shared vulnerability. "There's no need for words, Daniel. The truth is already out there. We can't undo what has been done." His gaze dropped, guilt washing over him once more. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emily. I made a terrible mistake, and I regret it every single day." The weight of his remorse hung in the air, intertwining with the remnants of love I still harbored deep within me. It was a delicate dance, the push and pull of emotions that defined the complexities of our relationship. "I believe you, Daniel," I replied, my voice filled with a mixture of sadness and compassion. "But trust is not easily mended. It takes time and effort, and even then, it may never be fully restored." He reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing against mine. "Please, Emily, let me prove to you that I can change, that I can be the partner you deserve." Tears welled up in my eyes, emotions threatening to spill over. "It's not just about changing, Daniel. It's about whether I can forgive, whether I can find it within myself to trust again." Silence enveloped us, the weight of our words hanging heavily in the room. The truth, raw and unfiltered, had laid bare the shattered fragments of our once idyllic marriage. And now we were left to pick up the pieces, to determine if they could ever be reassembled. In that moment, I realized that forgiveness was not a decision to be made lightly. It required introspection, healing, and a level of vulnerability I was not yet ready to embrace. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since the revelation of his infidelity, I felt a glimmer of hope, a flicker of possibility. "I need time, Daniel," I whispered, my voice filled with a mix of pain and determination. Time to heal, time to find myself again. Only then can we decide what comes next. He nodded, a mixture of understanding and regret etched on his face. I'll give you all the time you need, Emily. Just know that I'm here, willing to do whatever it takes. With that, we sat in silence once more, the echoes of our conversation mingling with the weight of our unspoken truths. The journey towards healing and reconciliation had only just begun, and as uncertain as it was, I knew deep within me that I was on the path towards discovering my own strength and the capacity to forgive.